Okay. I hope you guys enjoyed the balloon launch. That took 57 of your 60 minutes of lunch. Next up, we have Rufus with cognitive enhancement, drugs, electricity, and my favorite of the three, bullshit. The internet is down. The internet is down. But Rufus is a special friend of mine, and I always give him bullshit. He runs DIY Bio in LA, and I say, why don't you guys, do stuff? So this talk is a product of that.
All right. So I'm Rufus, and this is my talk. It's just going to be a general overview, as I'm not sure how much technical background you guys have in the whole biochemistry type stuff. All right, so first off, caveat, I'm not a doctor. Don't take my advice and do stupid things and then try and blame it on me because you're stupid. Don't do that. Or if you do, at least put it up on YouTube so we can all laugh at you. So what is cognitive enhancement? There are a couple different ways of looking at it. The main ways are an increase in fluid as opposed to crystallized intelligence. Now, crystallized intelligence is using your knowledge and experiences and applying them to new situations, but basically using existing knowledge that you already experience. The fluid intelligence works based off of fluid intelligence is irrespective of any previous experiences. It's things that is more innate and applying it just around then there's also increasing attention and concentration, memory acquisition, so you can form new memories better. Think the end goal being eidetic memory or photographic memory, and then also memory recall, so you can recall existing memories faster, more easily, and all of that. That's not going to happen. So there was a movie that came out, and this guy takes a magic pill, and all of a sudden he turns into a super genius, and he sees code flying around, and yeah, that's not real, because Hollywood's lied to you a lot. You don't use just 10% of your brain; you use 100% of your brain. If you didn't use 100% of your brain, it wouldn't be there. Your brain is actually very good at being used. If you lose a sense, either because you become blinded or you lose a limb, the area of the brain that is responsible for that often gets co-opted by nearby areas, so that 100% of your brain will be in use. So brains are complicated. You've got about 84 billion neurons in your brain, about 400 to 800 billion glia, which is another type of neural cell body. They are much more simple form, but their role is also becoming increasingly known. But the really big thing about all of this is the synapses and what's going on and how all the different neurons are talking to each other. And that's where you get things like where all the learning happens. Now, for each one of those neurons, you've got about 7,000 synaptic connections. So you've got 84 billion neurons. You can kind of do the multiplication there. It's pretty crazy. In the cortex, which is one of the most synapse-dense regions of the brain, you've got 10 to the 12 synapses per cubic centimeter. That is a lot of stuff going on. Now, at these synapses, things are controlled by releasing of neurotransmitters of several different types and used for many different functions. So it's not something that one can easily target one area or one pathway and just say, I want to make you do this better. So that's the challenge behind creating proper cognitive enhancers. Now, there are I'm going to go over a couple of different methods of cognitive enhancement. Behavioral, making changes in your life through training or meditation, things like that. Drugs or nootropics. That's when you have things like Adderall or dementia drugs or racetams or things like that. And then some crazy awesome science, which is my favorite part. Things like lasers and zapping your brain with a 9-volt and things like that. All right, so first off, one of the best things you can do to help yourself out is get enough sleep. Sleep is very important in memory consolidation, increasing plasticity, unlearning things that you already learned, and has been described as a way of defragmenting your brain. When your synapses fire, they go through a process of solidification so that the more they fire together, the stronger the synapse becomes. Now, this allows you to learn things in the first place, but you don't want to have things become too ingrained, because then you lose your flexibility. So at night when you sleep, it's thought that the random noise that our brains interpret as dreams is a method of scaling down the strength of those connections so that the proportions between all different synapses are the same, but you don't get things too cemented in their ways. Meditation is actually also quite effective method of increasing focus, clarity, and as well as sensory perception. So in particular, the mindfulness-based method of meditation, which includes things like body scanning, where you focus on the individual parts of your body, acknowledge thoughts in your head as they come in, but don't force it out. That is really good at just helping you be aware of everything that your body is doing, that you're thinking, and allow you to be able to focus on things more in the moment. Then there's the really popular in recent years, the methods of brain training. So this is where you get into more of the bullshit area. There is some definite ways where you can successfully increase your fluid intelligence, but most of them don't. So you see all sorts of phone apps and tablet apps about doing Sudoku or doing all these math problems to tell you what your brain age is, to bring your just to keep you moving and thinking. Now, the issue with these games isn't so much that they don't work or they're not fun or all of that. It's that while you're doing those, you're getting better at doing the individual game. It doesn't translate to any other part of cognition. So you may get really awesome at doing Sudoku, but that's not going to help you, remember the way home any better. The one method of training that has been shown mostly to work is a method called the N-back, or the dual N-back. Now, this is the reason it's successful is because it keeps increasing the difficulty, so you never get a chance to just kind of sit back and relax and rely on the automaticity of the method. And this is an example of a two-back here. So at the same time, a box is shown in one corner and a letter is spoken. And depending on the N of the back, say this is two-back, you're supposed to remember the second back as it goes in. Now this increases your working memory, how many different things you can juggle in at the same time. The standard number is that you can remember 7 individual pieces of information in your short-term memory at once. This is seen, some people can do more, most often servers, as in the people who give you your food in a restaurant, not the computers, are able to hold on to more at once. This is presumably due to being able to constantly having it in use all day. But so the N-back is actually effective and has been shown to have long-lasting effects as well. Interestingly, chewing gum actually helps focus your attention. It stimulates the stress relieving centers so that you're more able to pay attention to the thing at hand without having to worry about the other things. Hypnosis has actually been shown to have some effect as well. This is primarily in certain areas where the learning that you're trying to do involves portions of the brain that fight over each other for resources. So that by placing yourself in a state of hypnosis, you are able to remove the fight for active attention. And so now we get into the fun stuff of drugs and nootropics. Now, nootropics are a type of drug, but they're a very specific type. Cognitive enhancers, as a general rule, just make you smarter or increase your intelligence, increase your ability to remember things. Nootropics are a category of those that are also neuroprotective and extremely non-toxic. Now, this fellow whose name I will not attempt to pronounce created these criteria for a nootropic in the 70s, and they've been fairly popular within the community since then. There have only been some minor elaborations on those rules. Now, the types of drugs that you have available for use are, the most commonly seen is, of course, Ritalin and Adderall for the ADHD medication being used off-label to increase focus and stay awake longer. Now, the danger of those is it's not making you smarter, it's just making you not fall asleep. And often the stimulant effects can have ego-boosting effects as well, so that while you feel like you're much smarter and more on top of the world, you're not. Your reaction time may be lower, but you'll increase your rate of false answers and certain tests. So yeah, your judgment is off. So that's the danger of using those on top of, the general stimulant addiction fun things. Narcolepsy medications, primarily Provigil or modafinil, is also a very popular one. It has the benefit of not having the negative aspects of the amphetamine salts that are used to treat ADHD. So it just keeps you awake. Like, you're not jittery, you're not amped up, you're not all the rest of that. You're just not asleep. So that's the benefit of that one, and also has not shown much in the way of long-term side effects as well. Alzheimer's dementia medications, which are used to increase cognition in folks who have decrease. So you're trying to restore function. Now, these drugs may not actually do anything to a healthy human brain, because it's rebuilding things. You're trying to grow a new arm. It'll only be effective if you don't have that arm there. If you already have an arm, you can, it's that sort of thing. So while some of those medications have been shown to be effective in healthy humans, that is not 100% of the case, and you need to basically watch that on a case-by-case basis. Caffeine is actually also probably the longest used cognitive enhancer. It keeps you awake, it increases your ability to remember things, pick things up faster. It's general purpose awesome, and it tastes great. Nicotine actually has been shown to increase, similar to caffeine. Unfortunately, you have all that pesky cancer, which is pretty much a bad side effect. Now, another family is the more general supplements. These are what fall into the category of nootropics. The racetams, piracetam, aniracetam, oxiracetam, and pramiracetam are a series of compounds that act primarily on the cholinergic receptors, as well as a few others. They're very safe in higher dosages. Piracetam, which has been in longest use since about the 60s. People will take daily doses in excess of 4 grams, which is a fairly large amount considering your average pill of ibuprofen or Advil is about 150 milligrams. Now, some of the other derivatives, pramiracetam and aniracetam, are much more potent, so you don't need to take them in higher dosages. So the daily dose may be in the realm of 150 to 800 milligrams. Now, these are most often taken to the size of the effect of these can vary by the individual. Most often, it can have a small effect in the immediate, such that you appreciate music more, is how they often describe it. But it's clarity. You're picking things up faster. You're remembering things better. Just the general sort of usage. And this does fit the category of a nootropic as opposed to just a cognitive enhancer, so that it is extremely safe. The LD50 of these compounds is unknown. It's effectively non-existent, so you can take as much as you want, and you will probably run into very minimal side effects. Additionally, they also often serve as an anxiolytic effect, so it can reduce your overall anxiety, although there have also been several individuals who, as a result of taking the racetams, started having anxiety attacks. So anytime you're trying to mess around with the way your brain functions, that sort of thing will happen. There will always be side cases. Caffeine and theanine work really well together. Theanine is a compound that's found in tea leaves. Now, it's very interesting because depending on what you take it in context with, it can serve either to help you relax and sleep, or if you take it with caffeine, it really helps you focus in on what you're doing. Again, theanine has no known LD50. Caffeine does, but we all know how much caffeine to handle at this point. But so the theanine primarily acts to increase focus and quiet down the brain, as it were, so that when you combine it with stimulant effects with the caffeine, you have extra vigilance while having fewer external stimuli bothering you. Now we get into the fun, crazy, awesome science stuff. So in recent years, there's been an uptick in the use of transcranial direct current stimulation. Now what this is they basically, like in the photo, hook up a power source, in this case a 9-volt battery, and run current from one portion of the brain to the other. Now depending on where you place the electrodes, you can enhance the activity of those certain functional regions. So in this case, I gave 2 examples of the posterior parietal cortex. So if you run it there, you will increase your ability to pick up numerical learning. So in the studies, they used novel signs to take the place of numbers. So you're finding new patterns, or you're trying to figure out what a new mathematical method is just based on this. And after short periods of direct current stimulation over the posterior parietal cortex, people were able to pick up the patterns and implement them much faster than the controls, and the lasting effect went on up until about 3 months afterwards. They were still seeing significant increased ability in that range. Similarly, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex influences automaticity, which is your ability to do things without thinking about them. It's going on autopilot when you're driving home. It's being able to look at the plus sign and like, oh, I'm just adding the numbers together. You don't have to spend active thought trying to do the activities. Now, until just recently, they were unable to find any significant downsides to TDCS, aside from a sensation of your hair being slightly pulled out while it was running. It is relatively painless. The effects are temporary, but they're fairly long-lasting and mostly positive, and almost exclusively positive. But a recent study did find that there are, again, side effects that were a bit lurking. So when they hooked up the circuit with one end over the posterior parietal cortex and the other at the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, depending on which one was attached to the cathode or the anode, one was enhanced while the other was degraded. So if the posterior parietal cortex was enhanced, your ability to the automaticity of the new things that you're picking up much quickly was decreased. Similarly, if the prefrontal cortex node was being enhanced, it took longer to learn the new materials. However, the automaticity of what you did eventually learn was increased. So while still fairly small in the range of side effects, it's very important to know where the placements of the electrodes for these sorts of stimulus are, and to be aware of the possible ranges of effect of the deactivation at the other end of the circuit. Now, just a few weeks ago, another of the transcranial stimulation family came out where they used random noise instead of a constant current or alternating current. And the benefit of this was that you don't even feel it going on. You don't have the end of circuit deactivation that TDCS was running into. Yeah, so it basically seems to be a better version of TDCS. Although this is relatively brand new, and more definite study needs to be looked at this to look at the overall effect. But it's very promising as the next step in TDCS. And now my personal favorite, lasers. So there is something called low-level light treatment or low-level laser treatment, and that's when you shine small amounts of light on portions of your body to activate cellular activity based on the light absorption. Now, there's a certain range of wavelengths, I believe it's 650 to 1100 nanometers, that get absorbed by certain compounds in the mitochondria. Having trouble remembering which it is now. It's one of the oxidases. So by shining the light on them, you're able to increase the activity of these enzymes and thereby stimulate cellular effect just by shining the light on it. So recently people decided to see what happens or if you can actually get it in through the brain to have non-invasive neuronal stimulation with lasers, because lasers are awesome. So they found that shining a 4-centimeter diameter laser, there is, I forget the power methods, but about 2% of the light actually makes it through the bone to shine on the portion of the brain that is immediately in front of that. So you can stimulate portions of the brain without having to worry about the circuit setup or the side effects of that with a, say, low-powered laser. Particularly at 1064 nanometers seems to be the sweet spot for that. And depending on, again, which area you're shining it on to activate, you can get effects where decreased depression and anxiety. It's been shown to be an effective treatment in stroke recovery. And in general, it's been approved by FDA for use in muscle recovery as well. So it's not just neural stimulation. But I think it's really awesome that a little bit of light from the laser gets through your skull and shines on your brain and makes you smarter. But yeah, so that's all that. Any questions?
You mentioned endocircuit deactivation earlier. What exactly was that?
Beg pardon?
You mentioned endocircuit deactivation.
Endocircuit deactivation.
With side effects with the oral stimulation.
Oh, right. Yeah. So that's basically when you're creating the circuit loop, the anode end is affected as well as the cathode end. So it's not just you're not just stimulating the one part to increase the activity there. The end the circuit travels through all of the brain tissue, and it's going to affect all of it. So there just will be some possibly unanticipated side effects if you don't take into account the entire area that the electricity is traveling through as opposed to just where it's entering.
to try doing the stimulation on the numerical learning and on autonomous at the same time?
Yeah. So
They
they.
said one will affect the other, but what if they do both?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure if they've tried running multiple circuits or multiple simulations through the brain at once. I'd be interested to see what would happen. I'm not sure.
You mentioned during sleep your synapses, like I guess, rest, so they're not all firing together and it's less concreted. If you were to induce a lucid dream and you participate in that same activity, is that kind of being counterproductive to sleeping?
Not necessarily, but I'm not entirely sure on the effects of lucid dreaming on the actual physical mechanisms in your brain. Because of the somewhat difficulty of lucid dreaming, I'm not sure if there's been any studies on it to have like recorded EEG or fMRI activity of that. That would be something interesting to look at, though. But I wouldn't think that it would be that different from normal dreaming. Okay.
What about strong external magnets? There's some things we shut down areas of the brain.
Yeah, so that's transcranial direct magnetic stimulation. So there's a whole bunch of the transcranial blank stimulations. TMS is really cool as well. So you get to effectively have short-term lesions on the brain. They use these really big electromagnets, and then they can align them up so that you can very targetedly hit a point even deep within the brain and stimulate a magnetic field there, which as a result changes the electrical activity. Now, generally speaking, this is mostly done to bruise a portion of the brain to basically decrease activity there for a while. So you can bruise the amygdala to lessen a fear response if you're trying to work through someone who has PTSD or something, or that sort of thing. It's while still really cool, I don't think there is a lot in the way of application for cognitive enhancement.
But part of that study was based on the notion and the observation that people who had MRIs would then have significant mood increase anywhere from a few days to a week or so afterwards. And they actually did a retrospective study and found out that that effect was true. So the question is, what does that do to the brain in terms of what you talked about?
Well, anytime you're modifying how the brain acts, the short-term nature of this should, well, I'm not sure. Because in theory, it's a temporary stimulus, so the effect of it should just disappear after time. But due to the plastic nature of cells and the fact that we learn things once and it affects physical change in the brain as a result of functioning, you could have a lasting synaptic effect based on that bruising. But I'm not sure how the best way would be to measure that without, doing postmortems and examining the brain afterwards.
Do you currently use PCDS? And if so, what frequencies, what do you do all the time?
I don't currently use it.
Is there a quick explanation on why paracetam needs to be supplemented with choline bitartrate and aniracetam doesn't need to be?
I wasn't aware that aniracetam didn't need to. The metabolism of the racetam requires choline. So by taking another supplement with it, you are maximizing the uptake of the racetam. So yeah, you're just making sure you can get the most out of it.
I know it'll enhance the effects, but with paracetam, usually I get headaches unless I supplement choline, and aniracetam, I don't get those headaches.
Okay. It's been a minute, but I want to say the choline helps by either constricting or dilating the blood vessels as well, as that's often a cause of headaches. And I know that part of the metabolism of the racetam can have that effect oftentimes. I forget the exact interactions there. Sure.
When you're using dual MBAC and you're building up, say you get to like dual 7 back,
Okay.
should you keep going or should you start exploring like triple MBAC?
That's a good question. I'm not sure once you hit that point of the increased effectiveness. The big thing is just to keep being on the edge of learning. Like you have to just keep increasing the difficulty. Whether having the three matching the three versions as opposed to just having multiple things. I think they should both increase the working memory similarly, but I haven't seen any studies that said one way or the other about it. All right, well, that went faster than planned, but